The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year, it's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics or partisanship. Lives are at risk, lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities.
That was Hillary Clinton on the scourge of fake news. We know that in the final months of the campaign before November's election, more Americans clicked on fake news reports than reports from mainstream news sources. That's the first time that ever happened. There is fear that that same trend could become a reality right here in Europe, especially now that Germany is preparing to hold a general election in September. I want to pull in Margaret Sullivan now. She is a medium columnist with the Washington Post. She joins me from Washington. Margaret, it's good to have you back on the day. We made the phone call to you today to talk because of your latest column, which is entitled, "It's Time to Retire the Tainted Term Fake News." I want to show our viewers just part of what you wrote. You said that let's get out the hook and pull that baby off stage. Yes, simply stop using it. Instead, call a lie, call a hoax, call a conspiracy theory by its rightful name. After all, fake news is an imprecise expression to begin with. So, Margaret, what's your beef here? Is it that people are just misusing the word?
Well, something's happened to the phrase fake news, and what's happened is that conservative media has essentially co-opted it, and now it's being used to describe anything that is considered biased or maybe comes from a news organization that you don't happen to agree with, or is a story that you know reflects a truth that you'd rather not confront. It's being used, it's been weaponized. And I think that the core meaning of it, which is very important, has been lost.
This notion of a weapon, give me an example of where you see it being misused most egregiously.
Well, I see it constantly from conservative publications and conservative politicians who, when they read a story that they don't like, or when a point is raised, they'll shoot back fake news as if that should settle it. And really, fake news is something very specific. It is a lie meant to deceive in the form of a news story, but not something that's coming from a valid and respectable news organization, but rather something that's been dreamed up to get clicks. It could be from a group of Macedonian teenagers who are putting their work on Facebook for the purpose of making money. That's fake news. A story that you don't like in the New York Times is not fake news. Maybe there's something wrong with it. Maybe it reflects a point of view that you don't like. But calling it fake news really just dilutes the whole meaning of it. And so, my contention that we should stop using it is an effort to make people stop and think about what's happened to this term.
I mean, your point is well taken there, and the German intelligence services, I think they are right spot on with you in the definition of fake news. They are sounding the alarm, too, about the proliferation and the threat of fake news here in this country ahead of general elections in the fall. We've got a report here we want to take a look at. Let's take a look at that.
The internet as a source of unrest, cyber attacks, hacking, and fake news. Digital security is becoming increasingly important for politicians and political parties. In the summer of 2015, it took months to figure out that the German parliament had been hacked and Trojan software installed. For weeks, the German parliament went offline. No one knew exactly what information had been compromised. German security experts believe the attackers were following orders by Russian authorities. In an internal report, Germany's domestic security agency states the probability of success and thus the damage potential of Russian attacks is high. Like Interior Minister de Maizière, the domestic security agency chief is calling for offensive cyber operations. We must also be in a position to attack the opponent so that he will stop attacking us. Russia has been blamed for previous incidents. A year ago, fake news escalated into a political scandal and led to a diplomatic crisis between Germany and Russia. Russian state media alleged that a 13-year-old Russian-German girl named Lisa had been raped by an Arab-looking refugee. German Russians protested in front of the Chancellery. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused German authorities of a cover-up. The entire story was fake, an attempt by Russia to change people's minds about the Chancellor's refugee policy. Bruno Kahl, the head of the German Foreign Intelligence Service, is alarmed. There's evidence that cyber attacks have taken place that have the sole purpose of creating political instability. Fake news, interviews that politicians never gave. The frequency of digital misinformation is increasing. In May 2016, more highly sensitive data was attacked. The target this time was the Berlin CDU party headquarters. Again, authorities suspect Russian hackers.
So, Margaret, when we see what is going on in Germany and the concerns about the threat of fake news, what would you advise, or what do you see that the media can do then to defend itself from the proliferation of lies?
Well, I think we have to get across to the news consumer that, precisely what the problem is. And we have to write about it and talk about it and really try to educate as much as possible. Propaganda and lies and misinformation has been around for a long time. The difference now is that with social media and with the many ways that people get their information, it's turned into something much more dangerous. And so I think we can, to some extent, combat it with real news that's verifiable and accurate, and we have to combine that with an education effort, really just the kind of thing you're doing right now, which is to talk about it, to get it across to people just what the parameters of the problem are.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking, to tell people to have a healthy news diet and not to eat, or consume all the bad things such as fake news. What about the role then, as you said, with social media? What about Mr. Zuckerberg and Facebook? I mean, Facebook now has,
right,
and I'm quoting Jeff Jarvis here, has become the world's biggest super editor. Don't social media platforms, don't they have a responsibility here?
They do, and I think that Facebook very slowly, sort of in an agonizingly slow, cautious way, is coming to terms with that a little bit. They've taken some steps recently so that fake news can be flagged on the Facebook site, so that there is the beginnings, I think, of some editorial judgments being made. I mean, I'd like to see it taken a lot more seriously. I've actually proposed that Facebook have a team of experienced editors who can start to make decisions about what's valid and not valid. I'm not talking about censorship, but I'm talking about labeling things so that when people see a particular story and we know that it's coming from someplace that's not valid, there's some clue about this, rather than presenting it as if it was coming from the most established news organization out there.
And of course, there is the one thing that, our mothers, our grandmothers have said, don't dance around it. If it's a lie, it's a lie. It's a lie, right? And call it that. And when I read your commentary today, I thought about something that Ted Cruz said during the campaign last year about Donald Trump. Let's take a look at that.
This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth. And in a pattern that I think is straight out of a psychology textbook. His response is to accuse everybody else of lying.
The point of showing that, Margaret, is that Ted Cruz is using the word lie, and he wants the fact that a candidate has lied to be a news story itself. Do we do enough of that when we have elected officials who are lying to the public? Do we call them out enough on that? I mean, isn't that where we let fake news, the seeds of fake news, grow?
I think we're getting better about that. I don't know, again, whether we're moving quickly enough, but the whole rise of the fact-checking operations that we see in the United States, and the Washington Post has an in-house fact-checking organization that does a great job. We're willing to say, we have checked this out, and it is four Pinocchios, or it's a pants-on-fire lie. I think we are more willing. I know that the New York Times made its own news during the campaign when it used the word lie in a headline concerning Donald Trump. So, it's been a hesitation in the past. I think we'd much prefer to say in a statement that was unverifiable or something like that. Mm-hmm. We're very hesitant to use that bold word, but sometimes it's absolutely appropriate, and when it is, we shouldn't hesitate.
So really quickly, if we don't say fake news, what is the term to replace it?
Well, I don't think there is one overarching word. I think we might be saying hoax, we might be able to say a conspiracy theory, or we might be able to say a lie.
All right. Margaret Sullivan there with the Washington Post, talking about burying fake news, finally. Margaret, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, even as the day ends, the conversation continues online. You can find us on Twitter, either at DW News or at my handle, Brent Goff TV. And don't forget to use the hashtag of the day. And remember, whatever happens between now and then, no fake here. Tomorrow is another day. We'll see you then, everybody.